Marcus woke up every morning before the sun rose. His alarm rang at 5 a.m., and no matter how tired he felt, he always got out of bed. He lived in a small rented room near the city, with just a bed, a table, and a chair. Life was not easy for him, but he never complained. He believed that hard work and honesty were the only things that could help him move forward. After washing his face and getting ready, he wore his delivery uniform, picked up his bag, and left for another long day of work. Marcus worked as a food delivery man. His job was simple, but tiring. He rode his old motorcycle through busy streets, hot sun, and heavy rain to deliver meals to people he didn't know. Some people smiled and thanked him, while others barely looked at his face. Still, Marcus treated everyone with respect. He believed every person deserved kindness, even if the world was not kind to him. One morning, while delivering food to an old apartment building, Marcus noticed something unusual. On the ground floor, near a dark hallway, he saw a woman sitting in a wheelchair. She looked weak and tired. Her clothes were old but clean, and her hair was neatly tied. She was trying to reach a small bag on the floor, but her hands were shaking. People walked past her, but no one stopped to help. Marcus stopped his motorcycle and watched her for a moment. He felt something heavy in his chest. He parked his bike and walked toward her. Without saying much, he picked up the bag and handed it to her. The woman looked up, surprised. Her eyes were full of pain, but also gratitude. "Thank you," she said softly. Marcus smiled and nodded. He didn't think much about it. He just felt it was the right thing to do. He continued his deliveries, but he couldn't forget her face. The next day, Marcus passed the same building again. This time, he saw the woman sitting in the same place. She was holding a piece of bread in her hand and eating very slowly. Marcus realized she didn't have much food. He felt sad, but he didn't have much money either. Still, something inside him told him to help. That evening, after finishing his last delivery, Marcus bought an extra meal with his own money. It wasn't expensive, but it was enough for one person. He returned to the apartment building and gave it to the woman. She looked shocked and confused. "This is for you," Marcus said gently. She hesitated at first, but then accepted it. Her eyes filled with tears. "I don't have money to pay you," she said. Marcus shook his head. "It's okay. You don't have to pay. Just eat," he replied. That night, Marcus went home with an empty pocket, but his heart felt full. He slept peacefully, even though he knew he had less money for the next day. From that day on, Marcus made it a habit. Every day, he brought her food. Sometimes it was a simple meal, sometimes just bread and soup. He never told anyone. He never took pictures. He never asked her questions about her past. He only cared that she was not hungry. The woman's name was Eleanor. She didn't talk much, but slowly, she started trusting Marcus. She told him small things, like how she used to love gardening and reading books. Marcus listened quietly while she ate. He didn't realize it, but these few minutes became the most important part of his day. The people in the building began to notice Marcus. They saw him bringing food to Eleanor every day. Some people whispered, some laughed, and some didn't care. But Marcus didn't stop. He believed kindness was not for show, it was for the heart. Every morning, before starting work, Marcus made sure to keep a little money aside for Eleanor's meal. Some days he skipped his own lunch. Some days he felt weak, but he never complained. He believed that if he could help one person, his life had meaning. Eleanor noticed this too. She saw how tired Marcus looked, how worn his shoes were, and how his hands shook from working all day. She knew he was sacrificing for her, and it touched her deeply. But she said nothing. She only watched and remembered. Marcus thought Eleanor was just a poor, lonely woman who needed help. He had no idea that this simple routine of kindness would change his life forever. For him, it was just another day, another meal, another small act of kindness. But for Eleanor, it was hope. And for the future, it was the beginning of something much bigger. This was how everything started. Not with money, not with plans, but with a simple heart that refused to ignore someone in need. Eleanor was a woman most people never noticed. She lived in the corner apartment on the ground floor of the old building, where the paint was peeling and the lights in the hallway barely worked. People passed her door every day, but no one really knew her. To the neighbors, she was just a disabled woman in a wheelchair, quiet, slow, and always alone. No one asked her questions, and she never offered answers. But Eleanor's life had not always been this way. Long before the wheelchair, before the small apartment, before the silence, she had lived a life full of movement and noise. She once walked fast, spoke with confidence, and made decisions that changed many lives. Now, all of that felt like a distant dream, locked inside her memories. She kept those memories hidden, just like she kept her past hidden from the world. Every morning, Eleanor woke up to the sound of the city outside her window. She watched people rushing to work, laughing, talking, living. She stayed inside, waiting for the day to pass. Her legs no longer worked, and her hands were weak, but her mind was still sharp. What hurt her the most was not the pain in her body, but the way people looked through her, as if she was invisible. When Marcus started bringing her food, Eleanor didn't trust it at first. Kindness was something she had learned to be careful with. Over the years, she had seen how quickly people changed when they wanted something. So when Marcus offered her meals without asking for anything, she watched him closely. She studied his eyes, his tone, his body language. She wanted to know if this kindness was real. Day after day, Marcus came back. Sometimes he talked, sometimes he just smiled and left. He never asked about her past, never asked why she lived alone, never asked if she had family. That was what made Eleanor feel safe. He wasn't trying to fix her. He was simply helping her live. Eleanor began to wait for him. His footsteps in the hallway became a sound she looked forward to. When she heard his motorcycle outside, her heart felt lighter. For the first time in years, she didn't feel completely forgotten. But Eleanor was not weak, and she was not poor. What no one knew was that she was watching everything, not just Marcus, but the world around her. From her small window, she saw how people treated the weak, how they ignored pain, how they rushed past suffering. She had chosen this life on purpose. After her accident, she had hidden her identity and her wealth, wanting to see if kindness still existed without money attached to it. Marcus was different. He reminded her of something she thought the world had lost. Sometimes, when Marcus left, Eleanor would sit quietly and think. She thought about how he never took credit for his actions. He never told anyone what he was doing. He never looked proud. He just did it because it felt right. That kind of kindness could not be bought. At night, Eleanor opened an old notebook. In it, she wrote down everything. The date. The meal. The small details. Today he brought soup even though it was raining, she wrote one evening. Today he looked tired but still smiled, she wrote another day. These notes were not for memory. They were for truth. She began to test him without meaning to. Some days, she said nothing at all. Some days, she was slow to open the door. Some days, she asked him to sit and talk, just to see if he would get impatient. But Marcus never changed. He waited. He listened. He cared. Eleanor realized something important. Kindness that lasts is rare. Kindness that costs something is even rarer. As weeks passed, her heart slowly opened. She told Marcus small stories about her life, but never the full truth. She spoke about books she loved, places she missed, and dreams she once had. Marcus listened like her words mattered. That alone healed something inside her. One evening, after Marcus left, Eleanor looked at the meal in her lap and whispered to herself, "So kindness still lives." She rolled her wheelchair closer to the window and watched the sunset paint the sky orange and gold. For the first time in many years, she smiled without pain. She didn't know yet how or when, but she knew one thing for sure. Marcus had passed a test he didn't even know existed. And because of that, his life was about to change in ways he could never imagine. For now, she stayed silent, watching, waiting, and believing again. Marcus never told anyone what he was doing. To him, feeding Eleanor was not something special, just something that felt necessary. Every morning, before starting his delivery route, he counted his money carefully. He paid his rent first, then his phone bill, then set aside enough for fuel. Whatever was left, he split into two parts. One part was for him. The other part was for Eleanor. Many days, her part was bigger. As time passed, the cost of his kindness grew heavier. Food prices went up. His delivery company reduced bonuses. Some days, customers canceled orders, and Marcus earned less than expected. Still, he never skipped a day. Even when his stomach growled, he made sure Eleanor ate. Marcus's body began to feel the pressure. He worked long hours, sometimes more than 12 hours a day. His hands were rough, his back ached, and his eyes were always tired. At night, he lay on his bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about how he would manage the next day. Yet, every morning, he got up and did it all over again. One evening, Marcus stood in front of a small food shop, staring at the menu. He had enough money for one meal. If he bought food for Eleanor, he would go home hungry. He took a deep breath, smiled to himself, and ordered the food. Hunger was temporary. Guilt would last longer. When he gave the meal to Eleanor, she noticed something different. Marcus looked weaker than usual. His voice was softer, his movements slower. She wanted to ask him if he was okay, but she stopped herself. She had learned that some people carried their pain quietly. Neighbors began to talk. Some said Marcus was foolish. Some said he was trying to show off. A few warned him that helping too much would only bring trouble. Marcus heard the whispers, but he ignored them. He believed that real kindness did not need approval. One afternoon, a fellow delivery worker noticed Marcus skipping lunch again. "You can't keep doing this," the man said. "You're hurting yourself." Marcus just shrugged. "I'll be fine," he replied. And he believed it. What Marcus didn't know was that Eleanor saw everything. She saw the way he counted coins before leaving. She noticed how his shoes were wearing out. She saw how he sometimes leaned against the wall, catching his breath before knocking on her door. Each detail stayed with her. Late at night, Eleanor thought about the sacrifices Marcus was making. She had seen many people in her life, people who promised help but disappeared when things became difficult. Marcus was the opposite. The harder it got, the more consistent he became. One rainy evening, Marcus arrived completely soaked. His jacket was wet, and his motorcycle had almost broken down. Still, he smiled as he handed Eleanor her meal. That was the moment something shifted inside her. She realized this kindness was no accident. It was character. Marcus went home that night with an empty wallet and a tired body. His electricity bill was overdue. His phone screen was cracked. But he slept knowing Eleanor would not go hungry. That thought gave him peace no money ever had. Meanwhile, Eleanor opened her notebook again. Her writing that night was slower, more emotional. She wrote about sacrifice. About how true kindness reveals itself when it costs something. About how Marcus had given without knowing who she really was. She also wrote one new line at the bottom of the page. He must never know yet. Days turned into weeks. Marcus's life became harder, but his heart remained the same. He never asked Eleanor for help. He never hinted that he was struggling. He believed that if he could still give, then he was still strong. One morning, Marcus felt dizzy while riding his motorcycle. He pulled over, sat on the curb, and rested his head in his hands. For a brief moment, he wondered if he should stop helping. The thought lasted only a second. Then he stood up, started the engine, and continued his route. That same day, Eleanor watched him leave from her window. She saw how slow he walked, how tired he looked. Her hands tightened on her notebook. She realized the test had gone far enough. Marcus thought his sacrifices were invisible. He believed no one noticed. But kindness, when it is pure, is never truly unseen. This part of the story was not about reward. It was about endurance. It was about choosing compassion even when life became heavy. And without knowing it, Marcus was proving something rare. That real goodness exists, even when no one is watching. Eleanor had lived two lives, and no one around her knew it. To the world, she was just a disabled woman in a wheelchair, living in a small apartment, depending on a kind delivery man for food. But behind her quiet eyes was a mind that once ran boardrooms, signed contracts, and made decisions worth millions. Her past was not a secret because she was ashamed. It was hidden because she wanted truth, not sympathy, not attention, and not fake kindness. The accident had changed everything. Years ago, Eleanor had been powerful, respected, and rich. She owned several businesses, employed hundreds of people, and moved through life with confidence. But one night, a car crash took her ability to walk and shattered her trust in people. When the doctors told her she would never walk again, many people disappeared. Friends stopped calling. Business partners slowly moved away. Even family members treated her like a burden. That was when Eleanor learned a painful truth. Money could not buy real care. So she made a choice. She gave control of her businesses to trusted lawyers, kept her wealth hidden, and moved into this forgotten building under a different name. She wanted to see the world without her money protecting her. She wanted to know if kindness still existed for someone who had nothing to offer in return. For a long time, the answer was no. People ignored her. They stepped over her wheelchair. They pretended not to hear when she dropped something. Weeks passed without a single kind word. Eleanor's heart slowly hardened. She began to believe kindness was only a transaction. Then Marcus appeared. At first, Eleanor thought he was just another man who would help once and disappear. But days passed, and he kept coming back. He brought food, warmth, and something she had not felt in years. Respect. Eleanor watched him carefully. She noticed how he never asked questions. He never looked at her with pity. He never made her feel small. He treated her like a person, not a problem. And that scared her. Because if Marcus was real, then her belief about the world was wrong. Late at night, Eleanor would sit in her wheelchair, looking at the old photos she kept hidden in a box. Photos of her standing in front of buildings she owned. Photos of her smiling in expensive dresses. Photos of a life that felt like it belonged to someone else. She would then look at the simple meal Marcus brought and feel something heavy in her chest. She was testing him without telling him. Not with words, but with time. Weeks became months, and Marcus never changed. Even when he was tired. Even when he was struggling. Even when people laughed at him. He came. Every single day. That was when Eleanor knew the truth could no longer stay hidden forever. But revealing it was dangerous. If she told him now, would his kindness change? Would he feel used? Would he stop coming? Eleanor didn't want to lose the only pure thing left in her life. One evening, Eleanor's lawyer called. He had been watching the situation from a distance, as she had asked him to do. "Are you ready?" he asked. Eleanor looked at the food on her table. She thought about Marcus's tired smile. She thought about the way he said, "Eat well," before leaving. "Not yet," she replied. But something had shifted. She began preparing. Quietly. Carefully. She reviewed documents, accounts, and plans she had left untouched for years. She wrote letters she never sent. She started thinking about how kindness should be rewarded, not with money alone, but with purpose. Marcus had shown her something powerful. That real wealth was character. One morning, Eleanor asked Marcus to sit down. He looked surprised, but he did. She thanked him, really thanked him, for the first time. Her voice shook, and her eyes filled with tears. Marcus felt uncomfortable. He didn't understand why she was so emotional. "I just do what I can," he said. Eleanor smiled. That answer told her everything she needed to know. That night, she opened her notebook for the last time and wrote, "The truth will come soon. And when it does, it will change everything." Part 4 was the turning point. The moment the hidden life began to move again. The moment a secret prepared to become a gift. And Marcus, without knowing it, was standing at the door of a future far greater than anything he had imagined. Marcus never realized he was being tested. If he had known, he might have acted differently. But that was the reason Eleanor trusted him. His kindness was natural, not planned. It came from habit, not from hope of reward. Every day, he showed up the same way, with the same calm smile and the same simple words. "Did you eat well yesterday?" he would ask. Eleanor always nodded, even when she was tired. She wanted him to see strength, not weakness. As the weeks passed, Eleanor quietly changed her behavior. She wanted to see if Marcus's kindness depended on comfort or ease. Some days, she opened the door very slowly, making him wait. Some days, she said nothing at all, not even thank you. She watched his face carefully, looking for anger or disappointment. But Marcus never showed it. He waited patiently, as if time meant nothing to him. Other days, she asked him to sit and talk when he was clearly in a hurry. She knew he had deliveries to make, money to earn. Still, he sat down, even if only for a few minutes. He listened as she talked about old books, music, and memories that meant nothing to him, yet he listened like they mattered. Eleanor tested him with silence too. She stayed quiet, staring out the window while he sat beside her. Many people grow uncomfortable with silence. Marcus didn't. He simply sat there, calm, respectful, and present. That was rare. One afternoon, Eleanor dropped her spoon on purpose. It fell to the floor with a loud sound. She watched as Marcus quickly picked it up, washed it, and handed it back without a single sign of annoyance. In that moment, she felt something break inside her, something hard she had built over the years. Tears filled her eyes, but she turned away so he wouldn't see. Marcus had no idea that these small moments were being measured. He continued his routine, day after day, never changing. Rain or sun, pain or hunger, he showed up. Even when his motorcycle broke down, he walked. Even when he was sick, he still came. Eleanor knew this because she saw his red eyes and heard the cough he tried to hide. One evening, she asked him a question she had avoided for months. "Why do you help me?" she said quietly. Marcus looked confused. He thought for a moment, then smiled. "Because someone should," he answered. That simple sentence ended the test. Eleanor had met many powerful people in her life, but none had given such a pure answer. There was no story, no excuse, no reason to impress. Just truth. That night, Eleanor didn't sleep. She sat by the window, watching the street lights flicker on and off. Her mind was full of thoughts. She realized that Marcus had passed every test without knowing there was one. He had been kind when it was easy, and kinder when it was hard. She felt something she hadn't felt in years. Trust. The next day, Eleanor called her lawyer again. This time, her voice was firm. "It's time," she said. But she still needed one last thing. She wanted to make sure Marcus's heart was strong enough to handle the truth. Wealth can change people, even when they deserve it. She wanted to give him more than money. She wanted to give him a future. That afternoon, Marcus came as usual. Eleanor asked him to help her water a small plant near the window. It was a simple task, but Marcus treated it like something important. When he finished, he smiled proudly, as if he had done something great. Eleanor watched him and felt peace. She finally understood why she had survived everything she had been through. It was for this moment. To meet someone who reminded her what humanity looked like before greed, before pain, before loss. As Marcus stood to leave, Eleanor said, "Tomorrow, come a little earlier." Marcus nodded without asking why. That night, Eleanor prepared the truth she had hidden for so long. Not as a surprise, not as a reward, but as a gift. A gift for a man who never asked for anything, yet gave everything he had. Part 5 was the end of the test. And the beginning of a life-changing revelation. Marcus arrived earlier the next morning, just as Eleanor had asked. The sun had barely risen, and the street was quiet. He parked his motorcycle outside the building and took a deep breath before going in. He didn't know why, but something in his chest felt heavy, like the air was holding a secret. Eleanor was already waiting. She looked different that day. Her hair was neatly brushed, and she wore a clean blue shawl Marcus had never seen before. Her eyes were calm, but there was a strange shine in them, like someone who had finally made a decision after a long time. "Come in, Marcus," she said softly. Marcus stepped inside the apartment. He noticed the table was clear, no empty plates, no food containers. Instead, there was a small envelope placed neatly in the center. The room felt too quiet, like it was holding its breath. "Did I do something wrong?" Marcus asked, worried. Eleanor smiled gently. "No, you did everything right." She asked him to sit. Marcus obeyed, still confused. His hands rested on his knees, rough and tired from work. Eleanor looked at those hands for a long moment, then spoke. "Marcus, how much do you know about me?" she asked. "Not much," he said honestly. "You like books, and soup, and quiet mornings." Eleanor laughed softly, and it was the first real laugh Marcus had ever heard from her. Then her face turned serious. "I need to tell you the truth," she said. "And I need you to listen without interrupting." Marcus nodded. Eleanor began to speak slowly, carefully, as if every word carried weight. She told him about her life before the accident. About her businesses. About the money. About the people who disappeared when she could no longer walk. She told him why she chose to live in this small apartment, why she hid her name, and why she watched the world in silence. Marcus listened, but his mind struggled to understand. The woman he fed every day was a millionaire. The poor, forgotten woman was not poor at all. His chest tightened, and his head spun. Eleanor pushed the envelope toward him. "These are documents," she said. "Proof. And something else." Marcus didn't touch it. His eyes filled with tears, not from happiness, but from confusion and fear. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked quietly. "Because I needed to know who you were before you knew who I was," she answered. "And now I know." The room was silent again. Marcus stood up suddenly. He felt embarrassed, like he had done something wrong. "I didn't help you because of money," he said quickly. "I swear. I didn't know. I never wanted anything." Eleanor reached out and took his hand. Her grip was weak, but her voice was strong. "I know. That is why I am telling you now." She explained that she had arranged everything. The debts he didn't know she knew about would be paid. His mother's medical bills would be covered. A small business fund had been set up in his name. But Marcus stopped her. "No," he said. "I don't need this. I just wanted you to eat." Eleanor smiled, and tears rolled down her face. "That is why you deserve it," she whispered. Marcus sat down again, shaking. He felt overwhelmed. His whole life, he had struggled. Now, in one moment, everything was changing. But the money didn't matter to him as much as the truth. He felt like the ground had moved beneath his feet. "You tested me," he said softly, not angry, just sad. Eleanor nodded. "Yes. And you passed without even knowing it." Marcus wiped his face with his sleeve. He didn't know what to say. He only knew one thing. He would have done it all again, even if nothing had changed. Eleanor placed another envelope in his hand. "This one is different," she said. "It's not money. It's purpose." Inside was a plan. A community kitchen. A food program. A way to help people like her, and like Marcus, who were invisible to the world. She wanted him to run it. Marcus looked at her, his heart pounding. "I'm just a delivery man," he said. "No," Eleanor replied. "You are the kind of man the world needs." Outside, the morning light slowly filled the room. Marcus realized this was not the end of a story. It was the beginning of something bigger than both of them. Part 6 was the moment truth met kindness. And kindness did not break. Marcus sat in Eleanor's small apartment, still holding the envelope she had given him. His mind was spinning. All the years of struggle, of waking up early, of working through rain and heat, of skipping meals to feed someone else, it had all led to this moment. And yet, he didn't feel rich. He felt responsible. He felt the weight of what Eleanor had entrusted to him. "Marcus," Eleanor said softly, breaking through his thoughts, "I want to do more than repay you. I want your life to change, because you have already changed mine." Marcus looked up, confused. I don't understand. I didn't do anything extraordinary. I just fed you." Eleanor shook her head gently. "Feeding me was ordinary. Doing it every day, without asking for anything in return, without thinking about what you would get, that is extraordinary." He looked at her quietly, trying to process the truth. The woman he had fed day after day, the woman who seemed fragile and quiet, was not only wealthy but powerful enough to transform lives, including his. But it wasn't her money that mattered, it was her recognition of his character, of his pure heart. She handed him another folder, thicker this time. "I've arranged for your family to be taken care of. Your mother's medical bills, your younger siblings' education, it's all done." Marcus's voice caught. I don't know what to say. I've never had anyone do something like this for me." Eleanor smiled, but there was a seriousness in her eyes. "It's not a gift for gratitude. It's a gift because you deserve it. You've been kind in a world that teaches selfishness. That's rare, Marcus. That's why I want to give you the chance to do even more than you could imagine." He looked down at the folder again. Inside were blueprints for a community kitchen, a small non-profit to feed the homeless, and a program to train young people to help others in need. Every detail had her signature of approval. "All of this, it's for me to manage?" he asked. "Yes," Eleanor said. "You will run it. You will help people the way you helped me, without expecting anything in return. But this time, your impact will reach hundreds, maybe thousands of lives." Marcus shook his head in disbelief. He thought of all the meals he had carried to Eleanor's apartment, all the times he had skipped his own lunch, all the nights he had worried about money. He never imagined it would lead to this, something bigger than himself, something that mattered beyond his own life. "I don't know if I can," he said quietly. Eleanor reached out and held his hand. "You already can. You've been doing it every day. This is just more people, more meals, more hearts to touch. You know the way. You have the courage. And now you have the support you've always deserved." Marcus's eyes filled with tears. He felt overwhelmed, humbled, and inspired all at once. For the first time in his life, someone had not only recognized his kindness but amplified it. He realized that true wealth wasn't money, it was opportunity, it was purpose, it was the chance to make a difference. Over the next few weeks, Marcus worked closely with Eleanor and her team. They transformed her small apartment building's old kitchen into a fully functioning community hub. Every day, Marcus oversaw meals, trained volunteers, and shared stories of compassion. Eleanor watched from her apartment window, proud and silent, witnessing how his heart continued to shine through even as his responsibilities grew. The local community began to notice. People who had been struggling, lonely, or hungry started coming to the kitchen. Volunteers came, inspired by Marcus's story, and word spread. Marcus became a symbol of quiet courage, someone who had acted selflessly without expectation. And through it all, he remained humble, just the man who fed a woman every day without knowing who she was. One evening, after a long day of serving food, Marcus stood outside the kitchen, looking at the sunset. Eleanor wheeled up beside him, and for a moment, neither spoke. The sky glowed orange and gold, reflecting the warmth they had created together. "You see," Eleanor said finally. "This is what kindness can do when it's given freely. You've changed lives, Marcus. Not because of me, not because of money, but because of who you are." Marcus nodded. He didn't need words. He understood now that the story wasn't about wealth, or status, or recognition. It was about compassion. About giving, even when it costs you something. About being consistent, patient, and brave. Part 7 was the moment kindness was rewarded, not as a payment, but as a life-altering opportunity. Marcus's life had changed forever, not because of what he had received, but because of the difference he would continue to make in the lives of others. And for the first time, Marcus realized that helping someone in need could create a ripple effect, touching far more lives than he had ever imagined, and that true reward comes when your heart remains pure through it all. Marcus stood outside the community kitchen he now ran, watching the evening sky turn from soft pink to deep purple. The air was cool, filled with the distant hum of the city and the chatter of volunteers inside, chopping vegetables, arranging plates, and serving warm meals. For Marcus, this place was no longer just a project. It was a living testament to what kindness could create, a reminder that one small act could ripple into something much bigger than himself. He thought back to the day he had first met Eleanor. At the time, she had seemed like a fragile, quiet woman in need of help. He had given her meals simply because it felt right. He hadn't known her story, her wealth, or her past. He hadn't expected recognition, reward, or fame. And yet, that simple decision had changed the course of both their lives. Eleanor had been observing him the entire time, quietly assessing whether his kindness was genuine. She had tested him in ways he could never have imagined, through silence, patience, and small acts meant to challenge him. But Marcus had never wavered. Every day, he had shown up. Every day, he had given. Every day, he had acted without expectation. Now, the world was beginning to notice. News outlets had written about the delivery man who had helped a disabled woman, and how his simple, consistent acts of kindness had created a foundation to feed the homeless, help struggling families, and inspire a community. Volunteers traveled from nearby towns to join his team, drawn not by fame or money, but by the story of a man whose heart refused to ignore someone in need. Marcus didn't focus on recognition. That wasn't why he did it. But he did notice the change in himself. The long hours no longer felt burdensome, the challenges no longer felt impossible. Every meal served, every smile, every small word of gratitude from someone he had helped, reminded him that his struggles had meaning. He had discovered a purpose far greater than himself, a life where his actions could touch countless others. Eleanor remained a quiet presence in his life, a guiding force who had trusted him when no one else had. She often visited the kitchen, sharing advice, offering encouragement, and sometimes just watching from the corner with a gentle smile. Her wealth, which had once seemed like a secret world apart, was no longer important. What mattered was how she had used it to magnify the impact of Marcus's innate goodness. One evening, after a long day, Marcus wheeled himself to a quiet corner of the kitchen. He looked at a photo on the wall, the first picture Eleanor had given him when they started the project. It was a simple photo of a smiling woman, a wheelchair, and a tray of food. But for Marcus, it was a symbol of everything that had begun with one small act of kindness. He smiled, realizing that this was not just her story, or his story, it was a story of humanity, resilience, and hope. Children who once went hungry now had hot meals every day. Young volunteers learned what true compassion looked like. Families who had struggled to survive felt seen, supported, and valued. Marcus knew that this work would outlast him. The ripple of kindness would continue to expand, touching lives he would never meet. He remembered the first time he had delivered food to Eleanor and how tiny and insignificant the act had seemed then. But he now understood that greatness was not about wealth, power, or fame, it was about small, consistent choices made with love. Every plate served, every hand held, every smile shared, was proof that a single act of genuine compassion could change not only a life but an entire community. Eleanor came up behind him quietly and placed her hand on his shoulder. "You've done more than I ever imagined," she said softly. Marcus looked at her and shook his head, smiling. "I only fed you," he said. "No," she replied, "you fed the world." Marcus laughed softly, a sound of pure relief and joy. For the first time, he truly understood that life's richest rewards were not money, recognition, or comfort, they were the lives you touch, the hope you inspire, and the kindness you leave behind. As night fell and the kitchen emptied, Marcus stood in the doorway, looking out at the city that had once been indifferent to him, to Eleanor, to people like them. Now it felt alive with possibilities. And in that quiet, reflective moment, he knew the story was not ending. It was only beginning, an ever-growing story of compassion, humanity, and the extraordinary power of a single, selfless heart. Part 8 marks the legacy of Marcus's kindness. From a humble delivery man feeding one woman, he became a leader, an inspiration, and a living reminder that small acts of genuine love can create a world far brighter than anyone could imagine.